Welcome to EduCasts, home of EduCasters. In the bustling, high-stakes world of American education, we often get bogged down in the data. We fixate on standardized test scores, curriculum mapping, state standards, and the latest tech trends promising to revolutionize learning. We talk endlessly about rigor and grit. Yet, ask any veteran teacher what actually dictates the flow of a Tuesday morning in a third-grade classroom or a Friday afternoon in a high school physics lab, and they won't cite the Common Core. They'll tell you about the kid who hasn't slept in 2 days, the student acting out because they're terrified of being bullied, or the quiet one in the back who just needs to feel like they matter. This is where Abraham Maslow steps in. While his hierarchy of needs is a staple in Psychology 101, it is arguably the most critical framework for effective pedagogy. As educators, we can't effectively teach the mind until we've accounted for the human being housing it. Maslow's theory suggests that human motivation plays out in a specific order. We have to satisfy basic survival needs before we can worry about relationships. And we need to feel solid in our relationships before we can strive for personal achievement. To put it in plain English, you can't do calculus if you're starving, and you won't care about Shakespeare if you're afraid of getting beat up in the hallway. We will dive deep into how this hierarchy plays out in our schools, unpacking the reality of Maslow before Bloom, and exploring how authentic learning relies on a foundation of well-being. The basement, physiological needs. At the very bottom of the pyramid lie the physiological needs. We're talking about the absolute basics: food, water, sleep, shelter, and bodily homeostasis. In a perfect world, students would show up to school well-rested, having eaten a nutritious breakfast, ready to soak up information. But anyone working in the trenches knows that's often not the case. When a student's physiological needs aren't met, their brain goes into survival mode. It's simple biology. If blood sugar drops, your sleep debt racks up. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for focus, impulse control, and complex thinking, basically goes offline. The brain prioritizes immediate survival over long division. In the U.S. education system, we see the impact of this level every single day. Consider the free and reduced lunch program. This isn't just a nice-to-have charity, it's an educational intervention. We realized decades ago that a hungry kid is a distracted kid. However, it goes deeper than just rumbling stomachs. Sleep deprivation is a massive silent epidemic in our schools. We have teenagers running on 4 hours of sleep because they're juggling part-time jobs to help out at home, or they're overloaded with AP homework, or they're simply glued to screens until 2 a.m. When they come into first period, they aren't just lazy. They are physiologically incapable of retaining information. They are zoning out, heads on desks, literally running on fumes. Teachers often mistake these physiological deficits for behavioral issues or a lack of motivation. A second grader acting out and throwing a tantrum at 10:30 a.m. might not be naughty. They might be crashing from a sugar-heavy breakfast or no breakfast at all. As educators, addressing this level means advocating for breakfast in the classroom, allowing water bottles at desks, and maybe even cutting students some slack when they are visibly exhausted. If we don't clear this hurdle, nothing else we do matters. We are just spinning our wheels. Level 2, the need for safety. Once a student isn't hungry or tired, the next hurdle is safety. Now, this is a loaded term in American schools. Obviously, it refers to physical safety. In an era where active shooter drills are as common as fire drills, the physical security of the school building is always in the back of everyone's mind. If a student feels physically threatened, whether by a bully on the bus or a violent environment in the neighborhood, their amygdala is firing on all cylinders. They are in fight, flight, or freeze mode. You cannot learn algebra when your body is bracing for impact. But safety in school is about more than just locked doors and security guards. It's about emotional and psychological safety. This is where the classroom environment is make or break. Students need to know that the classroom is a predictable, stable place. This is why routines are gold. When a student knows exactly what to expect, where to put their homework, how the day starts, what happens if they make a mistake, it lowers their cortisol levels. Consistency is key here. If a teacher blows up one day over a missing pencil, but laughs it off the next, that unpredictability breeds anxiety. Students, especially those coming from chaotic home environments, crave structure. The school might be the only place in their life that makes sense, where the rules don't change on a whim. Furthermore, safety means the freedom to fail without ridicule. If a student is terrified that giving a wrong answer will lead to the teacher rolling their eyes or the class laughing, they will clam up, they'll shut down. Creating a safe container means building a culture where mistakes are viewed as data, not character flaws. It's about normalizing the struggle. If a kid feels like they are walking on eggshells, they aren't going to take the intellectual risks necessary for deep learning. They'll play it safe, stay quiet, and fly under the radar just to get through the day unscathed. Level 3. Love and belonging. We often talk about school as an academic institution, but for students, it's primarily a social ecosystem. Level 3 of the hierarchy is about love, belonging, and connection. Humans are pack animals. We are wired to connect. In the context of school, this manifests as the need to fit in, to be part of a group, and to feel accepted by peers and adults. This is the level where the teacher-student relationship becomes the most powerful tool in our belt. There is an old saying in education: they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. It sounds cheesy, but it's the absolute truth. If a student feels like just a number, or worse, a nuisance, they disengage. But if they feel seen, if a teacher knows they love skateboarding, or asks about their sick grandmother, or just notices when they get a new haircut, that connection creates a bridge for learning to cross. Belonging is particularly tricky in middle and high school. The social hierarchy of the cafeteria is brutal. Adolescents are trying to figure out who they are, and they define themselves by who they hang out with. Exclusion is painful. Neurologically, the brain processes social rejection in the same area as physical pain. A student who eats lunch alone in the bathroom stall is not worrying about their GPA. They are in a state of social survival. Educators play a huge role in engineering belonging. It's not about forcing everyone to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. It's about creating a classroom culture where bullying is nipped in the bud and inclusivity is the norm. It's about group work that is structured so everyone has a role. It's about checking in on the quiet ones. When students feel like they belong to a school community, when they have school spirit, when they are part of a club, a team, or just a tight-knit homeroom, their attendance goes up, their behavior improves, and their grades follow suit. They show up because they want to be part of the crew. If we ignore this need, we end up with students who feel alienated and disenfranchised, which is a recipe for dropping out. Level 4. Esteem needs. Now we're getting to the upper decks. Once a student is fed, safe, and feels like they belong, they start looking for something more. They want to feel good about themselves. They want respect. This is the realm of esteem needs. Maslow broke this down into 2 categories: the need for respect from others, status, recognition, attention, and the need for self-respect, competence, mastery, independence, freedom. In the classroom, this is where the rubber meets the road regarding grades, feedback, and achievement. This level is tricky because it's easy to get it wrong. For a while, the American education system went through a phase of trying to artificially pump up self-esteem. We handed out participation trophies and told every kid they were special just for breathing. But kids have a good BS detector. They know when praise is hollow. Empty praise doesn't build esteem. Competence builds esteem. True self-esteem comes from mastering something difficult. It comes from the struggle. When a student grapples with a tough math problem, fails twice, tries a new strategy, and finally cracks the code, that rush of dopamine is the feeling of competence. That's genuine esteem. Teachers support this by providing opportunities for small wins. We have to scaffold learning so that students are challenged but not defeated. This aligns perfectly with Vygotsky's zone of proximal development. If the work is too easy, they get bored and feel patronized. If it's too hard, they feel stupid and check out. The sweet spot is right in the middle, where they have to stretch but can still reach the bar. Also, we have to look at how we give recognition. Are we only praising the kids who get A's, or are we recognizing growth? If a student who usually fails gets a C+, that needs to be celebrated as a victory. If we only validate the top 10% of the class, the other 90% eventually figure, why bother? I'll never measure up. We need to help students build an internal scorecard so they can feel proud of their effort, regardless of how they stack up against the kids sitting next to them. Level 5, self-actualization. Here we are at the pinnacle, self-actualization. This is what every teacher dreams of. This is the student who is learning for the sake of learning. They aren't doing the assignment just to get a grade or to please the teacher. They are doing it because they are genuinely curious. They are driven by a desire to reach their full potential. In this state, students experience what psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi calls flow. They lose track of time. They make connections between different subjects. They ask why and what if. They are creative problem solvers and critical thinkers. The sad reality, however, is that our current system often actively works against self-actualization. We are so focused on standardization and testing that we strip away the autonomy required for this level. You can't self-actualize filling in bubbles on a Scantron sheet. Self-actualization requires freedom. It requires the space to pursue passion projects, to ask off-the-wall questions, and to direct one's own learning. To foster this, we have to loosen the reins. We need to incorporate inquiry-based learning, where students drive the questions. We need to offer electives that tap into their passions, whether that's coding, robotics, creative writing, or auto mechanics. We need to show them that education isn't something that is done to them. It's something they do for themselves to become who they want to be. Maslow described self-actualized people as being realistic, accepting of themselves and others, spontaneous, and focused on problem solving. Imagine if our high school graduates looked like that. That's the goal. But we have to be realistic. A student can't reach for the stars if they are worried about where they are going to sleep tonight.